Okay, so today we're going to do Unit 2, Day 12 notes, which is understanding the rate of change. The rate of change is just another name for slope. So anytime you see the words rate of change or constant rate of change, just automatically go ahead and mark that out and put slope. Now, the first problem, what is the rate of change between A and B? Now, rate of change can be the slope. So sometimes they're going to give you 2 points and they want you to find the rate between those specific points. So let's go ahead and find the slope of A and B. So between this point and that point, okay, which is point A and B. So now, of course, you know you're dealing with a graph. So you have to do the rise over the run. So the rise is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, so 50. And the run is 510. Okay, so 50 over 10 is just 5. So your slope is 5. And of course, if you notice, this line is going up, so that means it's increasing, so it's positive 5. Now, number 2, what does the rate of change for the slope mean according to the graph? Well, we know that the slope is the y over the x. We know that, well, let's just write it out like this to help us better understand. We know that the slope is just basically the rise over the run. So basically, in other words, we're doing the change of y over the change of x. So what does the y-axis represent? Speed. And the x-axis represents time in seconds. So basically, our slope is the speed over the time. So how fast something is going in a certain amount of time. Okay? So now, what is the rate of change between E and F? Change that to slope. So it says, what is the slope between E and F? So E and F is here and here. So remember, the rise over the run. So the rise is 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's 10, 20, 30. 30 for the rise, and then for the run, it's just 5. Okay? As you can tell from here to that point, it's just 5. So 30 divided by 5 should be 6. And of course, you notice that it's going down, so that means it's supposed to be a negative. So go ahead and add that negative in there to be a negative 6. So your slope between those 2 points is negative 6. Okay, moving on, let's look at the table. Which rate of change, so that means slope. So what is the slope between July and October? Well, what does July represent? Well, what month is July? March, April, May, June, July, so 7. And October is 10. So the only 2 points we're going to worry about is 7, 200, and 10, 100, okay? So let's go ahead and do our pattern. 100 minus 200 is negative 100. And then 10 minus 7 is 3. So my slope will be the right side over the left side gives me my slope. So the right side is negative 100. The left side is 3. So there's my slope. It doesn't simplify any further than negative 100 over 3. Now, interpret the slope. Well, remember, the slope is the rise over the run, which means the changes of y over the changes of x. So what does the y values represent? Computers sold over months. So in other words, that says computers sold per month. Okay? That's what the slope represents. Now, what is the rate of change between August and December? What is the rate of change between August and December? Well, August is 8 and December is 12. So they're asking me for the slope, so I'm only going to worry about August and December. So August is 8, 500. December is 12, 700. So 700 minus 500 is 200. 12 minus 8 is 4. So the slope will be the right side over the left side. So that gives me 200 over 4. And 200 divided by 4 simplifies to 50. Okay? Now, on your own, you go ahead and work out 7 and 8. And if you have any questions, please do not hesitate to ask me in class tomorrow. Let's move on to the other side where it says constant rate of change. Now, constant rate of change means the slope as well. The only difference between the rate of change and constant rate of change is that the rate of change, we call it rate of change because the slope could change depending on the part of the graph or part of the table. Okay? So it's going to change depending on what section you're looking at. It's not a constant rate. It's not a constant rate. It's the same rate. It's not the same rate throughout this graph. But now, if you look at the graphs we're about to look at, which are linear, you will notice that the rate of change is going to be constant. It's the same no matter where you go or what points you choose. It will simplify to the same slope, in other words. So that's why we call this the constant rate of change, because it's the same slope throughout the graph. These, we just call it the rate of change because the slope could change depending on what part of the graph you're looking at. Okay? So now, let's move on to the constant rate of change. So 9, what is the constant rate of change for the graph? So in other words, what is the slope of the graph? Okay, so the 2 points I'm going to choose for this graph will be this one and that one. Okay, and of course you could have picked any of your choice and you should still get the same answer if you simplify and count correctly. So the slope is the rise over the run, so let's rise 2, 4. And then run 1 or 2, 4. Yep, it's counted by 2, so by 4. So the rise is 2, 4. The run is 2, 4, and it's increasing. So my slope is positive 1. Okay. Now 10. What is the constant rate of change for the graph? So in other words, what is the slope for the graph? So once again, pick 2 points that you could use. I will use this one, and I might just use the starting point of the graph, or the starting corner of this graph. So anyways, the rise over the run. Rise over the run. So you rise 5 and you run 1. So 5 divided by 1 is just 5, and it's increasing, so it's a positive slope. What does the constant rate of change mean? Well, if you remember, the rise over the run is the slope. So in other words, it's the y over the x. So what does the y represent, the y-axis? It represents the number of miles. So miles. And the x represents time in hours. So basically, in other words, we're saying the miles per hour. Okay? This is what the constant rate of change means. Now, 12. What is the constant rate of change for the table? So what is the slope of the table? So it doesn't matter which ones you pick. You're going to have to do them all anyways. So let's start. 80 minus 70, 10. 70 minus 50, 20. 50 minus 40, 10. 40 minus 10, or 30 is 10. 30 minus 25 is 5. Now on the other side. 11 minus 9 is 2. 9 minus 5 is 4. 5 minus 3 is 2. 3 minus 1 is 2. And then 1 p.m. take away from 12 p.m. is 1. So now set up your right side over your left side. So that will be 10 over 2, 20 over 4. Ten over 2, we already have it. 10 over 2, we already have it. And 5 over 1. So as you can tell, all of these simplify to 5. So the slope of this table is 5. Now, according to the table, what does the rate of change mean? So remember, it's the y over the x. So what does the y represent? Text messages sent over the x, which is seconds. So text messages in seconds. So text messages sent per second. Okay. So now let's flip to the back. Now, of course, we have completed the notes, but if you have any further questions, please do not hesitate to ask me tomorrow in class.